Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to PhillyCAM Voices for your local news. I am your host, Amanda Johnson. We begin tonight with families who have lost loved ones in traffic accidents. They are taking a stand for safer streets in Philadelphia. Reporter Gretchen Clausing has more.
On the morning of Thursday, February 28th, members from the newly formed Families for Safe Streets Greater Philadelphia gathered with Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia and the Vision Zero Alliance to demand that the city, the state, and law enforcement work to make Philadelphia's streets safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists.
Who have unfortunately died on Philadelphia streets.
Families for Safe Streets Greater Philadelphia is the newest chapter of an organization of victims' families begun in 2014 in New York City.
My daughter Emily was killed in this intersection on the morning of November 28, 2017, while she was riding her bicycle to work. Emily was 24 years old when she was killed.
The family members have been working to make Philadelphia a safer place for road users around the city.
For months, we've been working with the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia and many other families, brainstorming ways we can advocate to make Philadelphia's streets safer. The trend lines are not good. Last year, more people were killed in traffic in Philadelphia than in 2017, and pedestrians and bicyclists made up nearly half of those people killed. We need to reverse these trends, and the only way to do it is to speed up the implementation of Vision Zero in Philadelphia. Better safety precautions on commercial trucks in the city, better enforcement of vehicles parked in bike lanes, protected bike lanes, and more education services. That's where we need to begin. We want to see the mayor's office and city council set aside money for Vision Zero funds and money for protected bike lanes. Bicycling is not a sport or a game for the people who ride on the streets of the city. It is often a means to a livelihood or the only way to connect with the community. That was why Emily rode a bike, and it's why tens of thousands of Philadelphians continue riding every day.
In June 2017, my husband Peter Jeffzikas was standing on a sidewalk at 16th and JFK. He was waiting for the light to change so he could cross the street and meet a friend for lunch. A speeding, out-of-control car jumped the curb and hit Peter. Peter believed deeply that modern, well-maintained public transportation was essential. Getting parents of children to child care facilities, then to their own jobs and back home again eliminates the needs for many cars to drive into the city. Peter was devoted to developing safer streets by employing all the methods known as traffic calming. Concepts of congestion pricing, parking cars outside the city and providing bus transportation into Center City, lower speed limits, dedicated lanes for bicycles, and eliminating excess lanes at Market and JFK Boulevard to slow the traffic flow.
The advocacy of the family members is beginning to have an impact. LaTanya Bird successfully advocated in 2018 to pass landmark legislation legalizing speed cameras on Roosevelt Boulevard.
The law to put speed cameras along the Roosevelt Boulevard was passed. It was passed to prevent more people from dying. I don't want any family to have to go through what our family has gone through.
We have found several devastating statistics. Between 2017 and 2018, only 16% of drivers who killed a pedestrian, bicyclist, or motorcyclist was charged in Philadelphia, despite, as in Peter's case, there being overwhelming evidence that the driver was at fault.
And on February 26, District Attorney Larry Krasner announced that the truck driver who killed Emily Fredericks has been charged with homicide by vehicle, involuntary manslaughter, and reckless endangerment of another person.
Thank you.
During the press conference, cyclists gathered to form a human-protected bike lane at the site of the crash to honor Fredericks' memory.
Our loved ones did not die in vain. We are here today to let you know that our chapter, Families for Safe Streets of Greater Philadelphia, will provide solace for all of us who lost loved ones to a tragic crash and work together for better outcomes for the future. Our goal is to support and advocate for legislation for safe streets for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers. And even though our hard work,
Advocates and supporters of safer streets in Philadelphia can contact the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia for more information.
we need Philadelphia.
Voters in Philadelphia will head to the polls on May 21st, 2019 for primary elections. Seats for mayor, city council, county sheriff, and register of wills are all up for grabs. Reporter Daryl Matthews talked to city residents about the issues that are important to them.
May 21st is just around the corner, and it's time to prepare ourselves with information on city officials and what they can do for Philadelphia. I had the opportunity to hit the streets to find out who's in the know and what's deep inside their minds about the election. The city elections are coming up, and you know we just had our presidential one, correct? So which one do you feel as though is important and why, or more important and why?
In today's society, I feel like more of the presidential election, because the president that we have right now in the White House is not a good man. As you can tell, the man's a racist, and he's a disrespectful man. And I feel like us as a whole and as a community, I feel like instead of worrying about city-based elections, we could worry about more presidential elections to put the right people in the White House.
So if you had one question to ask, what would it be?
I think I asked, what are they prepared to do about taxes? As far as it goes right now in the city, I feel like the citizens are paying an unfair amount of taxes, and that should be alleviated. And there are some other organizations that are taking up a lot of the tax money that could probably be relieved. So I would ask them, what would they do about that?
According to fairvote.com, a nonpartisan electoral reform, about 60% of the general population votes in a national election compared to 40% for each local election. Are you going to vote in this year's election?
Oh, no. I don't vote at all.
Is there a reason why?
Because from my experience, in my view, in my own value system, my own ethics and morals, politicians ain't about nothing. They ain't gonna get nothing done. They ain't gonna never get nothing done. So why vote for them? That's why.
If you could ask the city elections or city officials in the elections, if you want something changed, what would it be?
Make more homeless shelters, around the city, it's a lot of homeless people asking for food, asking for money, sleeping on benches and stuff. So it'd be nice to, give them a home, and there's not really enough out here in Philly, so if they built more, it'd be better for them.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. One question I just want to ask you is, if you had one question to ask any city official, what would it be?
I would ask, how can I be sure that you're in touch with the people that you're serving? I think there's a disconnect. Say when people make a certain amount of money or they're in a certain position of power, they don't really get in touch with actual people that they're serving. And so we have seen on the national stage these kind of bigger picture issues coming to a head where business is being served better than people, right? So I want to know from our local officials, which are more important, how can I be sure that you're actually reaching out to people? How can I be sure you're on the ground understanding issues from the perspective of people where it may be positions that you've never been in, positions of poverty, positions of needing access to resources that you always had and took for granted. So I would say that's my biggest thing is understanding and hoping that there's some kind of consciousness around who you're actually serving, and if it's just people like you or if it's the people who make up even more of the population.
As you can see, citizens of the city have much to say about this city's election. For PhillyCAM Voices, I'm Darryl Matthews.
For PhillyCAM's video voters guide coming out in April to learn more about all of that for our candidates. University of Pennsylvania senior Anya Moore has achieved one of the highest honors in academia. She has earned the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship to attend England's Oxford University. She joins me now to talk about her amazing accomplishment. Welcome.
Hi.
Woo! Just reading the information about you. Let's first start. What is the Rhodes Scholarship?
Yeah, so the Rhodes Scholarship is it's funding, a full scholarship to the University of Oxford, which is over in England, in the United Kingdom. And basically what old British politician named Cecil Rhodes left a bunch of money for scholarships for students from all around the world of former British colonies to attend Oxford specifically. And there are 101 of us from around the world every year, so 32 from America, one of which I am. And then there are scholars from, China, Zimbabwe, Canada, the Caribbean, different countries and areas and we will all go to Oxford together for at least the next 2 years to study a variety of subjects.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you have to do a speech, the video speech? Yeah. What did that entail, just applying for that?
So applying to Rhodes is actually really, really hard. It's a long process that starts, it ends in November, the end of November, whether you're selected or not. And then it actually starts in May for a lot of people. So first you have to go to your school and ask to be nominated for the scholarship. And then you compete. It sounds weird, but you compete for your school's nomination. And in order to do that, I had to submit an essay, a 2-page resume, and then I had to interview for it, and then my school gave me the nomination, and then you submit your final version of your essay, your CV. It's a very long process, and then either to Rhodes, and Rhodes either gives you a final interview or not. And then once you're in the final interview stage, that gets super intense. It is a cocktail party and a formal interview. So all of the finalists gather with all of the judges, and we have a conversation for a night, and that's part of how they pick you. And then the next morning, you have a formal 20-minute interview where it's just you and like 5 to 7 adults like grilling you and really trying to push you for 20 minutes. And then they deliberate, and then they line you up like it's Miss America or something, all 14 of you, and they say, we want you and you in each region, and that's how, the whole process works.
Wow. So let's back up to the school part. So do you all know who the other nominees are in the school, or they just kind of keep it silent?
So, you don't know the complete list of nominees who gets recommended / nominated by the school. You can get a general idea of what's applying because Penn also does something called a mock cocktail party where they line up their fake university judges and have us all come in and talk to them. So I knew from that cocktail party of other students who were applying, but not all the students could make that cocktail party, and some of the students were abroad who were applying, and some of them were alumni, so not everybody was there. But generally, it's not really, unless you have friends or you're from the cocktail party, you don't really know who else is getting nominated for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, You still look like you're 16. But at the age of 7, you kind of had this tussle with your mom of what you already knew you wanted to do. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I had always known that I wanted to be challenged academically. I knew that from a pretty young age. I'd say in about 1st grade, 6th grade, when I was about 7 years old, I was really interested in reading all the time and, just different things, learning more about the world. I think winning this scholarship has really caused me to reflect on my childhood, and I've discovered that I've always had this sense of urgency to learn and to know more. And so then in 7th grade, I didn't feel like I was being challenged at the school that I was attending, so I told my mom I really wanted to transfer to like a more difficult school, and she was like, no, that school is too far. It was Masterman in particular that I was interested in, and she was like, no, that school's too far. It's going to be too hard. You're really going to struggle there. And I remember I was sitting at my dining room table, and I don't know where I got the guts to do this. I normally didn't have these guts, but I said, either you sign this or I forge your signature. Either way, the transfer application is going out. And she was like, okay, I'll sign it. And then I waited a few months, and eventually I got into Masterman. And I think it was one of those times where even though I was small and I was little, my mom really just had to learn to trust me that I think she knew that I knew what I wanted and that I knew what I was doing.
So went to Masterman, and then you transitioned to the University of Pennsylvania. What was that like?
Yeah, so I think Masterman to Penn was an interesting transition in a lot of different ways. One, it's just a much bigger school. So Penn's got about 10,000 undergraduate students in addition to 10,000 graduate students, whereas Masterman in the high school in particular, it's about 100 per class. So the high school in general is only 400 people. So it took a lot of getting used to just being around so many people at once and constantly meeting people and what it meant to remember a bunch of names. And also the work is, it's really hard at Penn. Adjusting was a huge thing that I think a lot of college students go through from transition to high school. And there was definitely moments where during my first year in particular, I struggled with my work and understanding how to study better and different things like that. I also think culturally it was very hard. Even though Masterman is more similar to Penn in terms of makeup than most Philadelphia public schools, I still had lots of Black classmates. At the end of every day, I still went home to a predominantly Black neighborhood, to a Black household. I was from a working class family and from a lower income area in Southwest Philadelphia. So there was just certain things that I was used to seeing every day and certain ways that I was just used to living that once I got to Penn very much didn't fit in socially. And so that was also a hard adjustment.
What did you study at the University of Penn?
So I study sociology and urban studies and a minor in Africana studies. Basically, to simplify that, what that means is that broadly I study racial inequities and class inequities with a particular focus on education and social justice and race relations.
So now you're at University of Penn. What made you want to apply for the Rhodes Scholarship?
Yeah, so this is actually a really interesting story. The first time that anyone ever mentioned to me and mentioned the Rhodes Scholarship to me was actually in my sophomore year at Penn. And my initial reaction was, I never want to do that. My college advisor sat me down and she said, what do you want to do after graduation? I said, maybe I'll work in Philadelphia at a nonprofit, try and work in the government. And she told me, she said, you're thinking too small. You have such a big mind and you can wander the world, but you want to just stay in Philadelphia like you've been in all your life. And she said sort of kind of offhandedly, she was like, you could apply to a Rhodes Scholarship, win it, go to the UK for 2 years, and then come back and work in Philadelphia. And I remember thinking, I lie to you not, I said, I would never want to do that. That sounds crazy. I can't see myself doing that. And I think what made me want to apply is that over time, I had a lot of mentors and a lot of people that really believed in me and kept on telling me, your mind is big. You want to see more of the world. You're not going to learn all that you can learn and do and fulfill all your potential if you just stay in Philadelphia or even in the country for the rest of your life. And you really need to branch out. And eventually, I think over time, I started to warm up to that idea until about junior year after I won another prestigious scholarship called the Truman Scholarship. And that really helped me to understand that I could compete for, some of these larger scholarships that were on a national scale. So I said, why not? Let's just apply to Rhodes and see what happens. I had always, I had grown into the idea of wanting to study in the UK.
In the midst of all of this, you find yourself teaching at the Henry Lee Elementary School in West Philly. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I really want to emphasize is that my journey to winning Rhodes cannot be separated to what I've done at Lee. That when you apply to Rhodes, you have to write this 1,000-word essay. And my 1,000-word essay was all focused on my family and the things that I had been able to do at Lee. And the kids that I had worked with there and what I had learned from them and what I had learned from their families. And so yeah, they have been deeply intertwined in my journey. I started working as an assistant choir teacher at Lee my freshman year, and I was doing that work and for a couple years. And then eventually I started noticing that like a critical part of the school that we were working on was family and community engagement. So making the safe place, not only a safe place for students, but also for their families and their parents. And so then I wrote this giant essay and landed a job within their community partnerships and family engagement office, and have been doing that work with parent programming, family events, and this giant research study on community partnerships at Lee for the past couple years.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I really like this work.
So now that you're in your community, in the midst of all of the scholarships and the schooling, you're teaching kids, young kids. So what part of you are you imparting to them?
I think after I won Rhodes, they were interviewing the principal about me winning, and she said, I remember her saying, I think the kids see a lot of themselves in Ania because they're from the same place. She's from the same place as them, she looks like them in a lot of different ways. But I think I also see a lot of myself in them, as it's like a back and forth. Not only do they see themselves in me, but I see myself in them. And I've been able to reflect upon what it means to grow up as like a young Black woman in, America's poorest big city, to be a public school kid and what that means, and how all of my life I've had to deal with these inequities and different things like that, and how life is a lot about overcoming obstacles. And I see I'm not going to say that I'm through it, but I'm definitely at a breaking point. I've gotten through a lot of my obstacles. I've, had these great accomplishments, but I think watching them go through it currently and being the ones to battle through a public school system in a world that doesn't always care about them has made me realize a lot about myself and what I need to do in the future for future generations. And I think in terms of what I've given to them, I hope I've given them a lot of hugs, a lot of smiles. They're sassy. They're really, really sassy. So I think I push them. I think I'm a mentor and an assistant teacher that isn't afraid of the sassy. I definitely push them on it at moments like, yeah, hold your opinions down, like make sure you stay strong. And so I've just been trying to teach them a lot of the lessons that my own mom and mentors taught me growing up.
That is awesome. Now, one thing that I like to see, which you are actually doing, this is to look at the kids that you're teaching, you can kind of flash back on some of your own peers. Just knowing that type of sassiness and seeing that type of sassiness in the neighborhood and experiencing yourself, did you feel that gave you an upper hand as a teacher?
Yeah, I definitely think it did. Penn has a lot of partnership schools in the area, and just due to the demographics of the school, the University of Penn is only about 8% Black. And so naturally, just a lot of the mentors and assistant teachers and young volunteers that they send in are not from the same backgrounds as the children, both racially, ethnically, socioeconomically, demographic-wise. And so I have always, when I started the music program, I started it with a group of students that were like incredibly like musically brilliant. I'm talking like there was one kid who had like played piano for President Obama before, and like people who had like released their own albums, like these musical geniuses. And I was like, I have never had any formal music training whatsoever. And so I felt behind until we actually got into the school. And what I realized what mattered was that I could connect. Yes, I wasn't, maybe I couldn't teach them piano and things like that, but like what I was there often for was behavior management, student management, just pure emotional connections. Kids would have breakdowns and I would know how to take them out into the hall and what to say to them and how to talk to them. And that's really how I benefited from growing up in the same background as them. I also think, once again, the kids were sassy, and a lot of the volunteers from different backgrounds were like a little bit afraid of that. And I had to sit them down at moments and be like, look, you can't let your own racial biases about Black people like stop you from thinking, not stop you, let you think certain things about kids. Like at the end of the day, these are kids. Mm-hmm. They're not going to hurt you. They're just sassy. And so, I was there for a lot of that protecting of them and like, just helping them.
Now, some kids have anxiety transitioning from elementary school to the middle school down the street, the middle school to the high school around the corner. What are you preparing? How are you preparing to go to Oxford? What are some of the things that you're preparing to do? Besides a new book bag. Yeah. But what are you planning? How are you preparing yourself?
Yeah. So I still think I'm figuring that out in a lot of ways. A fun fact is that Rhodes Scholars are, when we first get picked, we're called Rhodes Scholars Elect because we're not officially Rhodes Scholars yet because we still have to apply to get into Oxford. They don't just let us in automatically. So what I've been doing right now is literally just applying to graduate school like a normal person. I had an interview this past Friday with Oxford's education department, and I'm waiting to hear back from them. I'm waiting to hear back from another program as well. And I don't know. I'm sort of kind of, I think I've been so serious the past couple years that now a lot of preparing for Oxford is just relaxing right now instead of kind of trying to reset physically, emotionally, mentally so that when I get there, I can do the best work possible. And I think that's true for when you transition from middle school to high school to college. Like you need that period of reset and then just like enjoy your family and your friends and just living life before you take this next big step. So I've been doing, I'm on spring break right now. I'm going on a trip with my friends tomorrow. I have graduation plans with, my family and my friends. I'm doing, sort of kind of silly things like going on Amazon and making a wish list for things that I want and just trying to enjoy the moment, I think.
Great answer. Because I'm like, I know just transitioning from the normal schools, I just want to know what I was going to wear the first day. let alone have to fly and get a ticket to go somewhere. So what are you planning to do? I know you have a lot to think about just getting there. But do you have any thoughts about what you want to do when you get finished?
Yeah, so finished at Oxford?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it depends on the direction in which my research and work is going to go there, which I'm not entirely sure of yet. But I know the goal is my family, they have expressed worry at moments. I want to get over there and want to stay for forever. And I'm telling them that is not true. The goal is always to come back to the States, to Philadelphia in particular. I'm hoping to, work for a few years and then eventually go to law school. I don't know if that'll be in Philly in particular or in another city, but going to law school and then eventually coming back to the city and doing public interest law in particular and public interest work. Eventually I would like to work for the city government or the state government and do different local economic development and family welfare and education policy, a mix of those different things for poor, low-income communities in the city and in the state in particular.
Well, our time is almost up, but I would like for you to look into the camera. There might be a little Ania or a little Anio that is there in the 7th grade that maybe like, I need to be challenged. Before we go, what would be your words of encouragement to them?
Yeah. So I would definitely say don't be afraid to live your wildest dreams, that a lot of people have sacrificed for you over time. A lot of our ancestors have not had voices, and they sacrificed so much for us to have voices and have opportunities. And what you know in your heart should be in your heart, and you should follow that.
Well, Ania, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank
I will be
you.
following you. Thank you so much for coming and speaking with us and encouraging our young people. Well, that is our time for today. We thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. See you next time.